weather is turning warmer, and this weekend I'm headed to Denver, Colorado to pack in as many activities as possible between Friday and Sunday night. As usual, I'm not going to be taking any time off from work, and I have just under 48 hours to squeeze in 20 or more activities while keeping my budget to just $200. This weekend I'm traveling with my wife Dana and our friends Dan and Julie, and since we're all flying in from Minneapolis, we got an hour back with the time change when we arrived in Colorado. This allowed us to catch a ride on the A-Line and arrive at Union Station in downtown Denver shortly after 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. We spent a few minutes strolling around the area and taking in our first views of the city before we walked a couple of blocks down to our dinner spot, Lucky Pie. We were fortunate enough to arrive during happy hour, which meant they had personal pizzas available for $5 each. So we all ordered a different style and shared, and I definitely enjoyed the smoked mozzarella the most. This next stop wasn't really on the itinerary, but Dan spotted it across the street, so we decided to stop by for a little bit and challenge my understanding of what the term wellness center means. We walked into what felt like someone's basement and were educated on a massive variety of chocolates, candies, lotions by some of the most relaxed people I've ever seen work in retail. On to the next scheduled stop, the Cruise Room. The Cruise Room is a very small bar located inside the Oxford Hotel, and what makes this stop interesting is that it opened the day after Prohibition ended in 1933 and never closed, which makes it the longest continually open bar in Denver. Once we finished our drinks, we walked 3 blocks northeast to Coors Field to watch the Rockies take on the Arizona Diamondbacks. We purchased $5 tickets to sit in the rock pile, which is located in center field, but we were excited to explore as much of the stadium as possible and see all the views that it had to offer. So I love learning about the nuances of each ballpark that I visit, and Coors Field did not disappoint. The tavern, which is located on the rooftop in right field, is exactly 1 mile or 5,280 feet above sea level. The bar itself is advertised as being exactly 52 feet 80 inches long, and they serve 52 different craft beers on tap. We ended up spending a few of the later innings inside of the Mountain Range Bar and Grill so that Julie could get the candied bacon cream puff, which looked and tasted delicious. Eat that. It was also a good chance for Dana to engage in her favorite pastime, napping. Unfortunately, it wasn't a winning night for the home team as the Rockies fell 3-6, but it was still a really nice night to hang out and watch the game. Julie's friend Beth, who had joined us earlier, was nice enough to give Dana and I a lift to our hotel, which was only about a mile away. We got all checked in by 10:40 p.m. and were ready to close the books on our first day in Denver. As far as the budget goes for Friday, I was spot on for transportation and activities, which ended up being just the ticket to Coors Field. I went a little over on food because of our stop at Lucky Pie, which was not on the itinerary, but it was definitely worth it, and I have no doubt I can make that up as the weekend progresses. Saturday morning, Dana and I had the alarm set for 7 o'clock to get started with our day and try to get through 15 different activities. The hotel serves a Continental Breakfast, which would be a great way to get us back on budget. But we have a big day in front of us, so we're just going to call this our first breakfast. The Delectable Egg is 1 block south of the Holiday Inn, which makes it an easy choice for our second breakfast. Dana and I shared a delicious Eggs Benedict and got ourselves fueled to prepare for a long day of walking. Our second stop of the day is the Convention Center, which is about a 15-minute walk. What we are really here to see is the 40-foot blue bear out front. As we read up on the piece, we learned that the artist crafted the bear to be peering through the window to illustrate the fact that you can't tell what is going on inside just by looking at the outside. Also, the original color of the bear was supposed to be sandstone, but a printout of the design came back blue by mistake, and the artist just went with it. The Convention Center made for a good launching point for us to start our stroll down the 16th Street Mall. The walkway was filled with free shuttle rides, bicyclists, and the occasional piano player. Midway through, we came across Skyline Park, which is described as a 3-block oasis in the center of downtown. The park has a series of games available, including ping pong, foosball, and mini golf. The mini golf course was actually pretty cool because it mimicked a lot of Denver's downtown icons and attractions, and is pretty similar in format to the course I played when I visited Philadelphia. Our next stop is a brief one at Larimer Square. Since we were walking by, we thought we'd take a quick peek to see the old Victorian buildings and the shops and restaurants that call it home. Our next activity was one that I was looking forward to most. In Denver, they have a bike share program called B-Cycle. We walked across Millennium Bridge to Commons Park where Dana and I rented a bike. You pay a fixed rate for the day, and in this case it's $9, and you can ride in 30-minute increments for free, checking your bike back in and then out at any kiosk. Dana and I spent about an hour enjoying a nice ride through Commons Park along the South Platte River and around city of Cuernavaca Park. At just shy of 80 degrees, it was a nice day for a casual ride. After returning our bikes, we walked over to Centennial Gardens. It ended up being too early in the season to see much in the way of flowers, but we did find a couple blooming before we left. As we walked back from Centennial Gardens, we saw a hot dog vendor and decided to grab a bite to eat and enjoy the views. We also got to watch some kayakers navigate the rapids as the river rushed by. Right across the South Platte River from Confluence Park is REI, which is an outdoor gear and clothing store. Minnesota has an REI a few blocks from my house, but several people still suggested a visit to Denver's flagship location. Similar to the Minnesota location, the store showcased camping and cycling gear, an array of hiking accessories, and a 47-foot climbing wall. As we approached the hottest part of the day, Dana and I crossed over Interstate 25 to Little Man Ice Cream, where we both enjoyed a cone and met back up with Dan, Julie, and their friend Beth, who had spent the morning hiking in the mountains. Since our next stop was 2 miles away and back through downtown, Dana and I rented some bikes again and rode down 16th Street Mall to the Hyatt Regency Hotel, while Dan and Julie caught a ride with Beth. The reason for stopping here was because the hotel bar is also an observation deck and is supposed to be one of the best views from downtown of the city. Unfortunately, when we got there, we found that the area was closed for a private event, so we had to decide what our substitute was going to be. I figured if we were already planning on overpaying for a hotel drink at the Hyatt, then it just makes sense that our substitute would be to walk a couple blocks and do the same thing at the Sheraton. I was trying to actually just steal sugar off your rim. I had read that the US Mint was going to be closed since it was a weekend, but since the one in Philadelphia turned out to be open when I walked by, I thought it'd be worth checking out the one in Denver on our way to Cheeseman Park. The weather was looking a little sketchy when we arrived at the park, but that didn't seem to deter anyone from enjoying their afternoon. As we all met back up, a friend of mine and resident of Centennial, Brian, joined our group as we searched for a couple geocaches on the west end of Cheeseman Park. That means everybody loses. Except for Dana. Dana wins. As we walked around the paths, we came up to the pavilion where we found hundreds of families taking pictures for what appeared to be prom for some area high schools. Connected to Cheeseman Park on the east side is the Denver Botanic Gardens. Luckily, this stop wasn't at the top of my list because I misread their closing time and showed up just after they locked their doors for the evening. The good news is that we were getting hungry anyways, so we crossed back through Cheeseman Park to get to Voodoo Donuts right off Colfax Avenue. Now that we finished up our appetizers, it's time to continue east towards our dinner stop, Tacos Tequila Whiskey. What a great name. When we sat down, we were handed a menu with a list of different options for tacos. They also gave us a marker so we could put down how many of each taco we wanted. I don't know if it was because we've been walking all day and we're extremely hungry, or if the food was really just that amazing, but every one of us thought that this was one of the better meals we had ever had. As the sun was starting to set, we walked off some of our food on the way to City Park to enjoy one more stop for the night. We took a lap around the park and checked out some of the monuments before we decided to try and find one more geocache before it got to be too dark. Yeah, if it's all wet, it's not a big deal.
It's not wet, it was wet.
So the plan for the evening was to head back to Brian's place in Centennial for the night. But before we turned in, Brian and his wife Anna brought us over to 222 Brew for a drink. Between biking and Brian giving us a ride, I was able to save the $10 I had budgeted for rides with either Uber or Lyft. My food and drink budget was pretty close. The main difference there was that I was planning on a more extensive lunch, but ended up grabbing a hot dog and pop from a vendor at Confluence Park. The savings on activities is kind of bittersweet. It's due to me missing the Botanic Gardens, as well as pushing my visit to Civic Center Park for the Cinco de Mayo celebration to Sunday. Sunday morning, we got up just before 8 o'clock and Brian took us down the street to a local park. I had to do a double take at the sign because it said Lookout Park, and I'm familiar with Lookout Mountain Park, which sits west of Denver and offers some really cool views of downtown. But if you're more into scenic views of housing developments, then this neighborhood park is definitely for you. It's always tough for me to decide on restaurants, so I'm always open to other people's input, so on Brian's suggestion, we went to Three Little Griddles for breakfast. I got their 3-meat griddle cake, which has ham, bacon, and sausage cooked inside it. And between that and the Evil Skeevers Brian ordered for the table, it was a fantastic meal to start the day with. Across the parking lot from our breakfast stop was Euflora. I'm glad we had the chance to visit 2 dispensaries because they were completely different. At Lodo, it felt like you were in someone's basement and workers were really eager to talk to you. At Euflora, it, at least to me, appeared to be a bank that had converted into a dispensary and we didn't have any interaction with the staff. 70 miles south of Denver in Colorado Springs is the Garden of the Gods. Since we spent all day Saturday in downtown, we wanted to take time and explore some of the geological formations nearby. We hiked through several areas of the park and got some glimpses of rock climbers that were scaling some rather tall peaks. It appeared to be a busy day, but it was nice to leave the city for a little while. After a couple hours, we packed up and headed back towards Denver and made our last stop at Civic Center Park for the annual Cinco de Mayo festival. There were street vendors, art, dancing, games, rides, and a whole lot more. We only had about an hour to explore before we had to head back to the airport, which was unfortunate because I easily could have spent half a day here. Brian dropped Dana and I back off at Union Station to catch our ride back to the airport. Tallying up Sunday, I already knew my transportation costs for the ride to the airport on the A-Line and my ride home in Minneapolis, so there were no surprises there. However, I came in way over budget on food for the day, and that's because Brian ended up saving me a good chunk of money by driving me around and really enabled Dana and I to visit Garden of the Gods on Sunday. So I paid for his breakfast at Three Little Griddles as a thank you. Overall, I could see I was going to land safely under my maximum budget of $200 for the weekend, but I was really excited to see how close I ended up coming to my planned budget of $175. I ended up having a great weekend in Denver with some truly excellent weather. I was able to do 25 different activities in just under the 50 hours that I had in the city. For more information on the cost breakdown, check out the information listed under this video.